The trailer for Avengers Doomsday gave almost everyone the same first impression. Thor looks shaken. His voice carries a weight we've never heard before. The Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all seem to be standing on the edge of the same battlefield. And naturally, the internet came to one conclusion. Dr. Doom has arrived, and everyone is terrified of him. It sounds convincing, but the more I looked at that trailer, the more one strange detail refused to leave my mind. Almost nothing in it actually behaves like a story about one villain. The fear doesn't feel personal. The urgency doesn't revolve around stopping a single man. Even Thor's speech isn't the kind of speech you give before fighting an enemy. It's the kind of speech you give when the world itself is breaking apart. And once you realize that, the trailer transforms into something completely different. We weren't watching heroes preparing for war against Dr. Doom. We were watching heroes preparing for something far more terrifying. Something Marvel has quietly been setting up for years, and if that's true, then we've all been looking at Avengers Doomsday the wrong way. To understand why, we have to leave the trailer behind for a moment and travel back to one of the biggest Marvel comic storylines ever written. Most fans know Secret Wars because it's the event where Dr. Doom becomes unimaginably powerful. But what many people don't realize is that Secret Wars wasn't where the story truly began. Before Secret Wars ever happened, Marvel spent thousands of comic pages creating one of the darkest and most psychologically devastating stories in superhero history. It wasn't about defeating a monster. It wasn't about collecting magical artifacts. It wasn't even about saving the universe. It was about asking the impossible question, what would Earth's greatest heroes do if saving their own world meant murdering another? That entire storyline revolved around one horrifying concept called an incursion. And if Marvel Studios is adapting even a fraction of that story, then Dr. Doom isn't the movie's first problem. He's simply the last person left standing after everyone else has already been forced to make impossible choices. An incursion sounds simple when you first hear the definition. Two universes begin colliding with each other. At first glance, it almost feels like another version of the multiverse cracking apart, something we've already seen in projects like Loki, Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But an incursion operates under a much crueler rule. Two universes cannot survive the collision. Eventually, one has to die. There is no magical reset button. There is no timeline pruning. There is no infinity gauntlet waiting to reverse everything. One Earth survives. One Earth disappears forever. That's the equation. Every single time. And the collision always centers around one location, Earth. When the two Earths finally touch, the destruction spreads outward until entire realities collapse into nothingness. Suddenly, this isn't a battle against a villain anymore. It's a countdown toward extinction itself. And that's exactly why even the strongest heroes begin questioning everything they believe. In the comics, the first person to truly witness this nightmare isn't Thor, Iron Man, or Doctor Strange. It's T'Challa. While in Wakanda, he accidentally discovers something impossible. Another Earth is approaching his own. At first, it seems like a hallucination. Then it becomes undeniable. An entirely different world is moving directly toward theirs, and every calculation points to the same conclusion. Collision is inevitable. Most people assume this is the moment where the Avengers assemble. But that's not what happens. T'Challa knows this isn't a problem that strength alone can solve. Punching another planet isn't exactly an option. Instead, he calls together the only people intelligent enough to understand the scale of what's happening. Not the Avengers, the Illuminati. And this decision changes everything because the Illuminati don't think like superheroes. They think like surgeons. performing an operation where every possible outcome ends with someone dying. The Illuminati is one of the most fascinating groups Marvel has ever created because every member represents the greatest mind within their own field. Reed Richards brings unmatched scientific brilliance. Charles Xavier offers telepathic insight unlike anyone else. Doctor Strange understands mystical forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Tony Stark contributes engineering genius and strategic planning. T'Challa combines leadership with centuries of Wakandan knowledge. Even Steve Rogers becomes involved because moral judgment is just as important as intelligence. But despite sitting at the same table, these people couldn't be more different. The Avengers fight to protect life without sacrificing who they are. The Illuminati exist in a far grayer world. They believe some secrets should stay hidden. Some sacrifices are unavoidable. Some decisions are too dangerous for the public, or even the Avengers themselves, to know about. They're willing to cross ethical lines if it means preserving existence. That's what makes them effective. It's also what makes them terrifying. Then the impossible question finally arrives. If another Earth is about to destroy yours, what do? You can stand there and watch your own universe vanish. Or you can destroy the other Earth before it reaches yours. Those are the only choices left. There isn't a third option waiting to be discovered. Imagine asking Superman to wipe out billions of innocent people he's never even met. Imagine asking Captain America to authorize the destruction of children, families, entire civilizations simply because they were born on the wrong planet. Suddenly, the greatest battle isn't happening between heroes and villains. It's happening inside the heroes themselves. Every value they've spent their entire lives defending begins collapsing under the weight of survival. And this is exactly why incursions are so much more dangerous than Thanos ever was. Thanos gave everyone someone to fight. Incursions force everyone to fight themselves. The Illuminati refuse to surrender without searching for another answer. Since the Infinity Stones have solved impossible problems before, they gather them once again, believing their combined power might stop the collision altogether. It's one final desperate attempt to save both universes without sacrificing either one. But as discussions continue, another conflict quietly begins forming inside the room. Steve Rogers immediately recognizes where these conversations are heading. Even considering the destruction of another Earth crosses every moral line he stands for. To Steve, it doesn't matter whether the victims live in another universe. Innocent lives are still innocent lives. He refuses to participate in any plan involving planetary genocide. For him, the conversation should end right there. Yet everyone else knows something Steve refuses to accept. If they do nothing, their own families, friends, and entire civilization will disappear instead. Suddenly, morality and survival become enemies. Neither side is completely wrong. Neither side is completely right. That's when the Illuminati make one of the darkest decisions in Marvel history. They don't argue with Steve anymore. They don't convince him. They remove him from the equation entirely. Using Doctor Strange's magic, Steve Rogers' memories of the incursions and the group's secret plans are erased. Think about what that means. Captain America, arguably Marvel's strongest moral compass, is intentionally kept in the dark because everyone knows he would never allow the decisions they're preparing to make. This isn't betrayal born from hatred. It's desperation disguised as necessity. The heroes aren't becoming evil. They're becoming frightened. Fear has convinced them that protecting one universe may require sacrificing another. And that single decision tells us exactly why incursions are unlike any threat Marvel has ever introduced. They don't corrupt people through power. They corrupt people through impossible responsibility. Now go back and watch Thor's speech in the Avengers Doomsday trailer again. Listen carefully to the words instead of focusing on the visuals. He isn't challenging Dr. Doom. He isn't declaring revenge. He isn't promising victory. Instead, he's pleading for unity. He's asking everyone to stand together as brothers and sisters. That language feels strangely out of place if one man is the enemy. But it makes perfect sense if the enemy is an event capable of forcing every hero into impossible choices. Because incursions don't simply destroy planets, they destroy trust. The Avengers stopped trusting the X-Men. The X-Men stopped trusting the Fantastic Four. Every universe begins viewing every other universe as an existential threat. Unity becomes infinitely harder than battle itself. Thor's speech suddenly stops sounding like a rally before war. It sounds like one final attempt to prevent heroes from tearing each other apart before reality finishes the job on its own. And that's exactly why one visual from the trailer may secretly be the most important shot in the entire film. Instead of showing one Earth under attack, Marvel appears to show three different Earths converging toward the same point. One belonging to the Avengers, Earth 616. One connected to the Fantastic Four. One representing the X-Men. On the surface, it looks spectacular. Three legendary franchises finally sharing the same screen. But beneath that excitement hides an incredibly disturbing implication. Those worlds may not be arriving to fight together. They may be arriving because the laws of the multiverse have already sentenced them to collide. If that's true, then every handshake in this movie carries the possibility of becoming a declaration of war. Every alliance exists under the shadow of survival, and suddenly, Dr. Doom doesn't need to fire the first shot at all. Reality itself already has. The comics take that idea even further by showing what happens after the initial shock wears off. At first, every hero believes there has to be another answer. Surely, the smartest minds in the multiverse can solve a problem this massive without sacrificing innocent lives. Reed Richards refuses to believe that science has finally met a wall it can't climb. Charles Xavier believes understanding each other's intentions might prevent violence before it begins. Doctor Strange searches every mystical path available to him. For a brief moment, hope still exists. But incursions have a way of punishing optimism. The closer the collision gets, the fewer options remain. Every failed solution becomes another reminder that time is running out. Every experiment that doesn't work pushes the heroes one step closer to making a decision none of them ever imagined they'd have to consider. That's the true horror of this storyline. It doesn't ask whether heroes are strong enough to save the world. It asks how long they can remain heroes when the world itself demands something unforgivable in return. One of the first cracks appears when Charles Xavier witnesses an entire planet disappear. Comics describe this moment with chilling simplicity. A living world full of billions of people is simply gone. No dramatic final battle, no triumphant sacrifice, just complete annihilation. And once Xavier realizes that this isn't an isolated incident, his perspective begins to shift. If another universe refuses to act, his own people will be erased instead. Suddenly, protecting mutant kind becomes more important than protecting abstract ideals. That's an uncomfortable truth Marvel has explored many times with the X-Men. Unlike the Avengers, mutants have always lived with persecution. They've spent decades fighting for survival against governments, hatred, and extinction. Their instincts are fundamentally different. When survival is threatened, they don't automatically choose diplomacy. They choose preservation. That's why an incursion creates such a dangerous divide between these teams. They're not arguing because one side is heroic and the other is evil. They're arguing because their entire histories have taught them completely different definitions of responsibility. Now think about what we've already seen from the trailer. Charles Xavier watches a world collapsing in front of him. The scene lasts only a few moments, but it carries enormous weight if Marvel is borrowing from the comics. That expression on his face doesn't look like someone preparing to defeat Dr. Doom. It looks like someone realizing that impossible choices are no longer hypothetical. If Xavier reaches the conclusion that another Earth must fall for his own universe to survive, then every member of the X-Men immediately inherits that burden. And this is where another major misconception surrounding Avengers Doomsday begins to fall apart. Fans keep imagining the X-Men entering the story as reinforcements for the Avengers. But what if they're actually entering as protectors of their own universe first? Cooperation only lasts as long as everyone's survival aligns. The second those goals conflict, allies can become enemies almost overnight. Reed Richards becomes one of the few people still desperately trying to avoid that outcome. Unlike many heroes, Reed approaches every crisis as a puzzle waiting to be solved. If enough information can be gathered, enough variables calculated, and enough possibilities explored, then surely there must be a solution nobody has discovered yet. In the comics, he even presents potential answers to other heroes using advanced projections, calculations, and simulations, hoping logic can overcome fear before violence begins. But there's one flaw in Reed's thinking. Logic only works when everyone still believes time is on their side. Once people become convinced that extinction is only hours away, emotions begin overpowering reason. Every discussion becomes an argument. Every disagreement feels like betrayal. The room stops feeling like a council of heroes and starts feeling like leaders negotiating during the final hours before global catastrophe. That tension eventually reaches a breaking point. Instead of finding common ground, conversations turn into confrontations. Distrust spreads faster than any cosmic event ever could. One team begins wondering whether another team is secretly preparing to strike first. Every delay becomes suspicious. Every proposal sounds like manipulation. Every promise feels temporary. This is why the trailer repeatedly places heroes from different universes opposite one another instead of immediately showing them united. Marvel wants us to notice the visual spectacle of seeing the Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four together. But beneath those incredible images lies a much darker possibility. They're standing face to face because each group knows the same terrible truth. If negotiations fail, one of their Earths may have to disappear forever. Marvel actually explored this exact emotional spiral in the comics through another unforgettable confrontation. The Avengers arrive on an alternate Earth inhabited by another powerful hero team. Initially, nobody wants to fight. Both sides understand the situation. Both sides recognize that the people standing across from them aren't villains. They're heroes trying to save their own families. For a while, words are enough. Everyone searches for another answer together. But incursions don't reward patience. As the collision draws closer, desperation replaces cooperation. Small disagreements become massive accusations. Every passing minute feels like another step toward universal extinction. Eventually, someone makes the decision everyone hoped could be avoided. And the instant that happens, diplomacy dies. Ironically, the first major explosion doesn't happen because someone enjoys violence. It happens because fear convinces them there's no other path left. Once that line is crossed, everything changes. Hulk unleashes strength powerful enough to shake worlds. Doctor Strange pushes magic beyond limits most sorcerers would never dare approach. Entire battlefields collapse beneath abilities we've rarely seen used at full potential. Heroes who once fought side by side now unleash their greatest weapons against one another. Yet despite all that overwhelming power, nothing actually solves the problem. The incursion continues. The collision keeps advancing. Every punch, every spell, every sacrifice only proves the same heartbreaking reality. You can't defeat an incursion by overpowering it. It's a law of reality, not an opponent standing in front of you. This is exactly why the Illuminati prepare for something they pray they'll never have to do. Across potential collision sites, they secretly place anti-gravity bombs powerful enough to destroy an entire Earth before impact. Just hearing that plan feels horrifying because these aren't weapons built by villains. They're built by the smartest heroes in existence. Imagine how far someone has to fall morally before creating a device designed for planetary genocide becomes the responsible option. But that's the psychological trap incursions create. Every terrible decision begins sounding reasonable once extinction becomes inevitable. Every ethical boundary slowly disappears beneath the pressure of survival. The bombs aren't symbols of cruelty, they're symbols of hopelessness. When the moment finally arrives, everything comes down to one person. T'Challa holds the detonator. For all his intelligence and discipline, he's still a king sworn to protect innocent life. His finger refuses to move. Every instinct inside him rejects the idea of destroying billions of people who have done absolutely nothing wrong except exist on another Earth. His hand literally trembles. That's one of the most powerful moments in the entire storyline because it reminds us that superheroes don't lose their humanity overnight. They lose it one impossible decision at a time. T'Challa simply can't become the executioner of another civilization, even if his own world depends on it. But standing beside him is someone who sees the situation completely differently. Namor has never believed morality should outweigh survival. Throughout Marvel history, his loyalty has always belonged to his own people first. If Atlantis survives while another civilization falls, then to him, that's a tragic necessity rather than an unforgivable crime. So while T'Challa hesitates, Namor doesn't. Without asking permission, without waiting for consensus, without allowing emotions to interfere, he activates the detonator himself. An entire planet is erased in an instant. That single choice permanently changes everything. It isn't just another shocking comic book moment, it's the point where friendships collapse, trust disappears, and heroes begin viewing each other as threats instead of allies. T'Challa doesn't simply disagree with Namor, he sees him as someone willing to sacrifice innocent worlds the second survival demands it. Namor, meanwhile, believes T'Challa's hesitation nearly doomed everyone they were trying to protect. Neither man walks away believing the other understands what leadership truly requires. Their conflict becomes deeply personal because both genuinely believe they acted for the greater good. Now think back to everything the Russo brothers have hinted about Avengers Doomsday. They've repeatedly teased the possibility of Avengers versus X-Men, and many fans immediately imagined a classic superhero crossover where misunderstandings lead to a few exciting fights before everyone teams up against Dr. Doom. But if Marvel is following the incursion storyline, those battles won't exist just to entertain us. They'll exist because every team will believe they're defending their own universe. And that's a completely different emotional foundation. The X-Men, influenced by decades of Magneto's and Cyclops' philosophy about survival at any cost, may be willing to make decisions the Avengers simply cannot accept. From the Avengers' perspective, destroying another Earth would mean abandoning everything they've ever stood for. From the X-Men's perspective, refusing to act could mean allowing their own world and every mutant living on it to vanish forever. Suddenly, there isn't a clear hero or villain anymore. There are only different definitions of what it means to save the people you love. And once every side becomes convinced that they're protecting innocent lives, the conflict becomes almost impossible to stop. That's what makes the Incursion storyline so much more mature than a traditional superhero war. Nobody wakes up wanting to conquer another universe. Nobody is chasing power for its own sake. Every terrible decision grows out of fear, responsibility, and the unbearable pressure of knowing that billions of lives are depending on you. The Avengers believe preserving their principles is what makes them heroes. The X-Men believe surviving long enough to protect their people is the only principle that matters. The Fantastic Four, led by Reed Richards, keep searching for a scientific breakthrough that may never come. And while all of these brilliant minds are pulling in different directions, someone else has been watching the entire situation unfold from the shadows. That someone is Dr. Doom. This is where the biggest misunderstanding surrounding Avengers Doomsday finally falls apart. The internet keeps asking one question: how powerful will Dr. Doom be? But the comics ask a completely different question. Why does Dr. Doom always seem to know more than everyone else? Doom doesn't simply walk into chaos and take advantage of it by accident. He understands the system that's creating the chaos in the first place. That investigation eventually leads him to one of the most mysterious forces in all of Marvel Comics, the Beyonders. To understand why they're so terrifying, you have to forget everything we've seen from villains like Thanos, Kang, or even cosmic beings like the Celestials. The Beyonders exist on an entirely different level of existence. To them, universes are experiments. Entire civilizations are variables in a larger equation. They don't conquer worlds because they have no need to. Instead, they observe, manipulate, and test reality itself from outside the multiverse. Their greatest experiment is known as the experiment of death, and it begins with something almost impossible to believe. Instead of planting bombs inside planets, they place a living bomb inside every single universe. That bomb is Molecule Man. Every reality has its own version of him, and every one of them is secretly connected to the same catastrophic purpose. Doom slowly uncovers this hidden design, and unlike every other hero, he realizes that defeating an enemy won't solve the crisis. If the multiverse itself has been rigged from the beginning, then someone has to stop the experiment before it reaches its final stage. So Doom makes a decision that actually sounds logical. If every Molecule Man is a bomb waiting to destroy reality, then eliminating those bombs should save the multiverse. It's exactly the kind of ruthless calculation that only Dr. Doom would make. While everyone else is trying to survive the incursions already happening around them, Doom goes after what he believes is the root cause. Across countless universes, Molecule Men begin dying one after another. But that's where everything goes horribly wrong. Instead of preventing disaster, every death tears another hole in the structure of reality itself. The invisible walls separating universes begin weakening. Space between dimensions starts collapsing, and before anyone fully understands what's happening, the incursions begin spreading everywhere. That's one of the greatest twists in Marvel history because it completely changes how we see Dr. Doom. He isn't just a conqueror looking for power. Ironically, he's one of the few people genuinely trying to stop an even greater catastrophe. His arrogance convinces him that only he can solve the problem, and in trying to save existence, he accidentally becomes one of the biggest reasons reality starts collapsing in the first place. Now imagine Marvel adapting that exact idea for the MCU. Suddenly, Thor's speech isn't about preparing for Doctor Doom. The Avengers assembling isn't about stopping one man before it's too late. The X-Men aren't crossing universes because Doom invaded their world. Every single hero is responding to a disaster that has already begun long before they realized it. Dr. Doom simply understands that disaster better than everyone else. And if the trailer is hiding that truth, then Marvel has pulled off one of its smartest marketing tricks ever. They placed Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom front and center, knowing every fan would immediately focus on him, while quietly showing us the real threat in the background the entire time. We saw worlds colliding. We saw different Earths moving toward one another. We saw fear, urgency, and complete uncertainty across every hero's face. But because Doom was standing there, we automatically assumed he was the reason everything was falling apart. What if that assumption is exactly what Marvel wanted us to make? What if Doom spends most of the movie manipulating events from the shadows while everyone else tears themselves apart trying to survive? Because that's exactly what Dr. Doom has always done better than anyone else. He doesn't win simply because he's stronger. He wins because he's thinking several moves ahead while everyone else is focused on surviving the present. Thanos wanted balance. Ultron wanted evolution. Kang wanted control over time. But Doom wants something far more dangerous. He wants control over reality itself. Once the Beyonders are finally confronted in the comics, Doom accomplishes something almost unimaginable. He doesn't merely defeat them, he steals their power. The same man who unintentionally helped accelerate the collapse of the multiverse suddenly possesses enough cosmic energy to reshape existence according to his own vision. From the broken remains of countless destroyed universes, Doom creates an entirely new reality known as Battleworld. Pieces of different universes are stitched together into one enormous planet where civilizations that should never have met now exist side by side. Entire histories are rewritten. Most people living there don't even remember that another multiverse ever existed. To them, Battleworld has always been reality, and above every kingdom sits one ruler god emperor Doom. When you understand that destination, Avengers Doomsday suddenly stops looking like the grand finale and starts looking like the beginning of Marvel's greatest collapse. This movie isn't simply bringing together the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men for one massive crossover event. It's laying the emotional and narrative foundation for Secret Wars. Every alliance formed in this film, every sacrifice made, every impossible decision forced upon these heroes is likely preparing audiences for the complete destruction of the multiverse before Marvel rebuilds it into something entirely new. That's why the trailer deserves to be watched differently. We thought Thor was afraid of Dr. Doom. He probably isn't. We thought the Avengers were assembling to stop one man. They probably aren't. We thought those three Earths appearing together were simply a celebration of Marvel finally uniting its biggest franchises. They may actually be the first visible sign that the multiverse has already entered its final stage of collapse, and every universe we've followed for nearly 2 decades is now racing toward the same unavoidable collision. Dr. Doom is still one of the most important characters in this story, but not because he's the first villain standing in front of the heroes. He's important because he's the only person who understands what comes after the collapse. While the Avengers are trying to save a single Earth, Doom is already planning for the world that will exist after the multiverse dies. And that's why the title Avengers Doomsday may have been misleading all along. The Doom isn't just Victor Von Doom, it's the Doomsday facing every universe at the same time. It's the impossible choice between your own world and someone else's. It's the moment heroes stop fighting villains and start fighting each other. It's the collapse of everything the Marvel Cinematic Universe has spent nearly 2 decades building toward. And if Marvel truly follows the heart of the comics, then Avengers Doomsday won't be remembered because Dr. Doom appeared. It will be remembered because it forced Earth's greatest heroes to answer the one question no superhero story has ever answered without consequences. How far would you go to save your own world? If saving it meant destroying someone else's. If you enjoyed this breakdown and discovered a completely new way to look at Avengers Doomsday, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to MovieCast for more cinematic Marvel deep dives. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can do so with a $25 super thanks. It really helps us continue creating videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.